Lydia sat on the edge of her bed staring at the city lights through her window. The streets of New York pulsed with energy, but inside her apartment silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She had spent years learning how to live with the emptiness, how to smile through the cracks, how to pretend that the weight of her family's history didn't press down on her every single day. Her mother Elizabeth had remarried 5 years ago, and from the moment Darcy stepped into their lives, everything changed. He wasn't cruel, nor was he particularly affectionate, just an enigma. He carried himself with a quiet authority, never raising his voice, never letting emotions slip through his carefully controlled expressions. Lydia never called him Dad. She never even thought of him as family. He was simply there, a presence, a reminder that her mother had moved on from the past that still haunted Lydia that night as she traced patterns on the sheets absent-mindedly. A soft knock broke her thoughts. She glanced at the door, her pulse quickening. It was late, too late for casual conversations. "Come in," she said, keeping her voice even. The door opened slowly, and Darcy stepped inside. He looked different, not in appearance, but in energy. The usual confidence in his stance seemed forced, his jaw tighter than usual. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low. Lydia folded her arms, skepticism rising. "Now, couldn't this wait until morning?" He hesitated. "No, it's important." She studied him, trying to read between the lines, but his expression was unreadable. With a sigh, she nodded toward the chair near her desk. "All right, sit." Darcy didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes locked onto hers. "There's something I've been keeping from you, something your mother never told you." Lydia's stomach clenched. She had spent her whole life navigating half-truths and carefully curated family secrets. This felt like another storm waiting to break. "I'm listening," she said cautiously. Darcy exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his dark hair. "Before your mother, before any of this, there was someone else." Lydia's brows knitted together. "Someone else?" He nodded. "Someone I loved, someone I lost." He paused, searching her face for a reaction. "And that person was connected to you?" Her breath hitched. The air between them felt suddenly heavier, as if the room itself was holding its breath. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Darcy's gaze softened. "Your father, your biological father, he wasn't just some man your mother once loved. He was part of a story I never thought I'd have to face again." Lydia felt her hands clench into fists. "Are you saying you knew my father?" A slow, solemn nod. "Not just knew him, we were." He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "We were more than friends, we were like brothers." Lydia's mind reeled, trying to grasp the implications of his words. Her father, the man who had always been a ghost in her life, was somehow tied to Darcy. Angled up in Darcy's past. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice sharper now. Darcy sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I lost him, and when I lost him, I lost a part of myself." Lydia swallowed the lump in her throat. "And my mother, where does she fit into all this?" His lips pressed together in a grim line. "She was the bridge between us. After your father, after he was gone, she and I found solace in each other. It wasn't love, not the way people imagine. It was survival." Lydia's pulse roared in her ears. Everything she thought she knew about her family had just been turned inside out. The man standing before her, the stepfather she had kept at arm's length for years, wasn't just some stranger who entered her life by chance. He was part of a deeper, more complicated past, one that had shaped her without her even realizing it. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Darcy looked at her, and for the first time she saw vulnerability in his eyes. "Because you deserve the truth, and because I don't want to be another ghost in your life." Lydia's breath caught. She had spent years hating the idea of him, resenting his presence in her mother's life, in her life, but now she wasn't sure what she felt anymore. Lydia sat frozen, Darcy's words echoing in her head. She had spent years constructing walls between them, but now those walls were cracking. He wasn't just her stepfather, he was part of a past she had never been given the full truth about. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. "You said my father and you were like brothers. What does that even mean?" Darcy exhaled, his expression shadowed with something between regret and nostalgia. "We grew up together, same neighborhood, same ambitions." He was the kind of person who made life feel larger than it was. "We had plans, big dreams of leaving behind everything that tied us down, but life doesn't always go the way you plan." Lydia's hands clenched. "And my mother, she never mentioned any of this." "She wouldn't," Darcy said. "Your father wasn't just the love of her life, he was her weakness. Loving him meant losing control, and your mother, she's never been good at losing control." Lydia tried to process the weight of his words, but something still didn't fit. Why did she marry you? Darcy looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. Because grief has a way of making people reach for whatever feels solid. I wasn't her great love, Lydia. I was just the one who was still standing. A hollow settled in her chest. So you were a consolation prize. His jaw tightened. If that's how you want to see it. Lydia shook her head. And you? What were you reaching for? Darcy hesitated. I thought I was reaching for stability. I thought I could give her something real, something safe, but in the end some ghosts never let go. Lydia's breath was uneven. Do you regret it? He held her gaze. I regret a lot of things, but not telling you the truth was starting to feel like the biggest one. She felt the weight of his words pressed against her. For years she had believed her life was built on solid ground. Now she wasn't sure if anything had ever been real. I don't know what to do with this, she admitted, barely recognizing the sound of her own voice. You don't have to do anything, Darcy said softly. Just know that the story you were told isn't the whole truth. He stopped himself, exhaling sharply. I just needed you to know. Lydia searched his face for something, anything that would make this easier to accept, but all she saw was a man carrying the weight of too many years, too many choices. For the first time she didn't know if she saw him as an outsider anymore. Lydia avoided Darcy for days, her mind tangled in thoughts. She couldn't escape the way he looked at her that night, the weight of his words. It all left her feeling unsteady. She wasn't sure what unsettled her more, the truth about her father or the way Darcy's presence had suddenly shifted in her life. He was no longer just her mother's husband, he was something else entirely, something she couldn't define. When they finally crossed paths again, it was unplanned. She had stepped into the kitchen for a glass of water, only to find him there leaning against the counter staring at nothing. He turned when he heard her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. I thought you left, she said finally. I thought about it, he admitted, but that didn't feel right. Lydia hesitated, then sighed. I don't know how to look at you anymore. Darcy studied her carefully. I never wanted to change how you saw me. She shook her head. But you did. A silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken things. Lydia wanted to be angry. She wanted to resent him for breaking apart the version of her life she had clung to for so long, but anger felt false. The truth was she didn't know what she felt anymore. She sat down at the small dining table, running her fingers along the edge. Tell me more about him. Darcy pulled out the chair across from her. Your father. She nodded, a faint smile touching his lips, something almost wistful. He had this way of making everything feel possible. He believed in things, even when there was no reason to. He used to say that life wasn't about waiting for things to happen, you had to make them happen. Lydia felt a lump rise in her throat. Sounds like someone I would have liked to know. Darcy's expression darkened. He would have been proud of you. Her chest tightened. You really think so? I know so, he said without hesitation. A strange warmth spread through her, tangled with grief for a man she had never known, but beneath that grief was something else, something she didn't want to name. Over the next few weeks things between them shifted in ways she couldn't explain. The tension that had once been rooted in resentment was gone, replaced by something softer, something unfamiliar. They talked more about books, about life, about the things they never thought they'd share with each other. It was as if the walls between them had finally collapsed, and for the first time Lydia saw him not as her stepfather, but as a person, and that terrified her. One evening they were caught in the rain on their way back from the grocery store. Lydia laughed as water soaked through her clothes, shaking her head at the absurdity of it all. Darcy just watched her, something unreadable in his expression. You're different when you laugh, he said. She glanced at him. What do you mean? You let your guard down, he said simply. It suits you. Something in the way he said it made her pulse quicken. She looked away, pretending she hadn't noticed the way his gaze lingered, but she had, and she knew deep down that things between them would never be the same. Lydia barely recognized the life she was living. Every interaction with Darcy carried an unspoken weight. Every glance held something she wasn't sure she was ready to acknowledge. She told herself it was just the shift in perspective, the knowledge of their intertwined past that made things feel different, but deep down she knew better. It wasn't just about the past, it was about now. She had spent years avoiding him, dismissing him as nothing more than her mother's husband, but now every moment alone with him felt charged. Every conversation dipped into something deeper than either of them had intended. She hated how natural it felt, how easy it was to be around him now, and she hated that she didn't want it to stop. One night, as she was reading in the living room, Darcy walked in and hesitated before sitting across from her. He had been doing that a lot lately, hovering near her, waiting for an invitation she never gave but never denied. You look tired, he said. She smirked. That's just my face. A soft chuckle escaped him, and for a moment it was easy, but then he grew quiet, his gaze lingering. Lydia, the way he said her name sent a shiver through her. She closed her book, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "What I don't want things to be strange between us," he said, "but I don't know how to stop them from being." She exhaled slowly, pressing her fingers against her temple. "I don't either." A silence stretched between them, thick, with everything left unsaid. Then, before she could think, before she could stop herself, she asked, "Do you love my mother?" Darcy's expression flickered with something unreadable. He didn't look away. "I care about her, that's not what I asked." His jaw tightened. "No, not the way she deserves." Lydia felt something shift inside her, something she had been trying to ignore for weeks. "Then why are you still here?" He ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. "Because leaving would feel like another lie." Her heart pounded. "And staying?" He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Staying means facing what I shouldn't." Feel her breath caught the air between them, was heavy, charged with something that scared her as much as it thrilled her. She stood abruptly, needing space, needing to breathe, but Darcy followed, stepping in front of her before she could walk away. "I never wanted this," he said quietly. "I never expected this." Lydia swallowed hard. "Then what is this?" He hesitated, then reached out, fingers grazing her wrist. "Something I can't change." She closed her eyes for a second, willing herself to think clearly, but clarity never came, only the overwhelming certainty that she was standing at the edge of something she could never take back. She pulled away. "I need to go." Darcy didn't stop her. He just nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. Lydia didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to move to escape the inevitable, but deep down she knew the truth. There was no running from this, and for the first time she wasn't sure she wanted